Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are currently heading back after installing our tiny little bit of the ISS here. We are now ready to bring this shuttle down, and for some reason, maybe I'm conflating this with a previous flight, but I have it in my head that we already lowered the orbit. But that does not appear to be where we are. We're right by the station here, and maybe this is correct. I don't know. I'd have to go back and check the video. But for now, we're just going to burn retrograde here, and we're going to bring our periapsis straight on down to 80 kilometers. We don't really care too much where we end up landing, ultimately. So this is reasonably fine. We're just going to bring this down, and then the design process for the Canadarm can start. That's going to be an interesting one. I'm not 100% certain how we're going to pull that off. It'll be interesting. The way that it's actually put together is intriguing, at least according to the images that I was looking at. So we'll see how that ends up going. For now, of course, we need to bring these guys home safely. So we'll bring this down to 80 kilometers. And 80 kilometers, there we go. The ISS is now about 4 kilometers away. And we're going to circularize our orbit here. Bring that straight on down, and if we really wanted to, we could bring this down directly to about our 40-kilometer marker. And I think that's quasi-okay. We would probably end up coming down in the dark again. Or dark-ish. Yeah, I don't know if we want that. I think what we'll do is we'll bring this out and just circularize it for right now, and then we'll bring it down from about here with our periapsis being about there. That'll probably be a better way to go. YouTube just doesn't handle dark very well, so we'll just position up over this direction. Looks good, and we'll warp on forward. It'll be about a 20-minute wait until this burn, so let's... Well, we're not quite there yet. Okay, let's warp. Phenomenal. So about 10 more minutes now. Beautiful. And we're just going to circularize this on up. We've got plenty of Delta V in our shuttle here to bring us back safely. We're going to have to vent a fair amount of it, in fact. So 57 seconds, 50 seconds, 40, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay. About a 31-second burn, and we can physics warp our way through this. Phenomenal. Coming out of the physics warp as we get to the end of the burn, and we'll call that good enough. 80 kilometers on either side. Perfect. So now here about over the Terminator is where we want to bring this down. Actually, no, it's not. It's more like here or so. Cool. That should guarantee that we come down on the day side. We're probably going to be coming down in water, but that's reasonably fine. Let's make our way on over to the node, and we'll do our deorbiting burn. And then, of course, we're going to have to vent our remaining fuel, because we want to ensure that we have a reasonable mass distribution here. So there we go. Let's warp our way on around. Excellent. About 1 minute until this burn. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10... And 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. There we go. Cool. This should be good enough. Yeah, it absolutely is. So let's go over towards horizontal velocity up. Let's orient ourselves over this direction-ish. A little bit further on the roll there. There we go. That's about right. And let's make our way on down. Phenomenal. So, of course, we're going to have to reorient here as we enter the atmosphere. That's normal. And we should probably remember to vent the fuel. That does tend to help. So we'll get rid of the remaining fuel. We do not need it. In fact, it is actively detrimental to our flight characteristics. So that'll be fine. Let's physics warp our way through. I think, yeah, this is almost certainly going to be a water landing. And that's probably ideal, to be honest. Water landings are a little bit less sketchy than land landings. Land landings are doable, but they are sketchy. There's no doubt about it. So downward we go here. That does mean that we're not going to need to deploy our landing gear, which is probably good. And over we pass over the last little bit of land. Yeah, this is definitely going to be a water landing. It's actually kind of close to the KSC. Kinda. That is good for us. The closer we get to the KSC, I believe the better our salvaged prices get. So we get a percentage of the cost of this when we recover it. And the closer we are to the KSC, I believe we get a larger percentage. I would have to test that or look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Like 95% sure. So obviously, we are beginning to slow down here. There we go. We just went into flight mode. Phenomenal. Our periapsis height has dropped by half. So that's absolutely great. And dropped by half again as of now. And another half. And another. And, well, yeah, now it's negative. So that's absolutely fine. Phenomenal. We're just going to continue gliding as far as we can, losing as much speed as possible. Definitely going to be a water landing here. 1000%. We can just see the KSC continent off over to the side over here. KSC itself is right off over here. Not too far away, but we're not aiming for it. We really can't maneuver at these speeds. So that's fine. We're at about 2 kilometers and dropping fast in terms of our speed. That's all good. We are seeing these heat gauges start to drop now. No real heating issues as of right now. And let's slow this right on down. So really, we don't... Because this is a water landing, we don't really care so much about, like, diving down and swooping up as we come in for the landing. I kind of just want to keep converting our horizontal speed into vertical speed. That said, we're a little too high right now to just drop in, right? So that's where the dive and the swoop comes from, is because as this changes from horizontal to vertical speed, we have worse performance in our recovery. That's the way that this works. So we want this to be basically pointed at surface velocity up right now, because we really, really do want to be losing altitude. We want to be as low as possible when our horizontal speed starts to hit 0. Because when our horizontal speed gets too low, and we can just kill rot here, when our horizontal speed gets too low, then we start to run into significant issues. Now we're going to need to start pulling up fairly soon at probably 3-ish kilometers. So we'll let this fall for a little bit here. 4 kilometers as of now. And we're going to start pulling up at 3 kilometers. Okay, pulling up. We do like to go nose up, and we just fully flipped over there. Okay, that's exciting. Let's try that again. But a little bit more gently this time. We just don't... We want to belly flop this, right? We don't want to go in nose first. We want to convert as much of our speed into distance as possible right now. So we just want to park up here at the horizon. We're much lower now. We're about 1 kilometer up. And so there's a lot less time at this point for vertical speed to build up. But I still want to get a little bit lower here right now. So we're going to let this drop down a little further. 700 meters. 600. 500. 400. 300. I'm pulling us up. Okay. Shoots out. And we're getting what altitude we can. Coming in like so. Excellent. Like I said, water landings are a lot less spicy. They're also not realistic, to be clear. Water landings for the space shuttle are not realistic. So we're going to recover that vessel, and of course we're going to need to get our payment, and then we're going to start making the Canadarm. So the thing about that is, the Canadarm is it's got the whole like mobile servicing system component to it, right? But this is, I believe, yeah, we're only sending up the Canadarm 2. So the SSRMS is what we're sending up here. Noted. So the arm itself. Gotcha. Okay, so that's going to be very, very interesting because we're going to have to make some decisions here on imperfect information. And the reason the information, and we need to get our payment, of course. The reason that the payment is imperfect is because I'm not an expert in these things. And so I'm not sure exactly where the dividing lines here are. We're just going to kind of make them up. So we're going to load up our space shuttle here. And in this case, for this particular shuttle, I'm thinking that we are going to, well, first things first, we're going to remove this truss module. This does not need to exist. I'm going to remove this hinge as well. And I'm going to remove our shuttle's arm here. We're probably going to end up reworking that. But this is going to be here. And we're going to have the shuttle arm become the Canadarm. Now, if I recall correctly, one of the key things, and we can take a look at this image here. If I recall correctly, one of the key things here is that the Canadarm has grabbers on both ends, and it has like different mounting points where it can grab on, and then it can reach over, pretend that this is a grabbing point. It's not, but pretend that this is a grabbing point here. It can grab that and then let go here, and it's functionally at a new place. I don't know if we can replicate that in KSP because we've tried similar things and it resulted in both of the arms letting go. We can try that though. That's definitely an option. And one thing I also want to point out is the way that this is constructed, right? So we can see here that this clearly is a boom arm that can be, or potentially could be extended. I don't know if it actually is, but we'll probably implement it that way. And the same thing here, but then it's got these hinges, right? I think we're going to say that the grabbing component of it, like there's a big mess down here as far as we're concerned, right? But it looks to me like it goes from here to here, and then it goes up this direction, and then it comes out here, and then the grabbing component is here. That's what it looks like to me. I'm not 100% certain that I'm parsing this image correctly, but that is the way that I'm parsing this. So it has a lot of bends to it, right? So to that end, I think we're going to start from, it's kind of symmetrical, to be honest. So we may make this slightly truncated. It can be expanded later, and in fact, it does get extended later. If we go into the actual Canadarm page here, then we can see that it's got the mobile remote servicer base station and the special purpose dexterous manipulator, which that is a lot of what we are seeing in this image over here. So if this is the Dexter, then what we know for a fact, this would be like the mobile base station. And then this is the actual arm here. So that goes off this way. It connects here. This is not part of what we're looking to build here. So basically, I'm reading this as this being the connection to Dexter, and we'll see if that's true or not. But functionally, we need to build something like this, and the mobile base stations, I don't think is actually something that we're going to have here at this point. It's a base platform for the robotic arms. It was added to the station during STS-111. Now, what we're lifting off here is STS-100. So, correct. The MBS has not yet been added in at this juncture. Perfect. So that looks good. That means, of course, that we can get ourselves the Canadarm built here. We don't need to worry about Dexter. We don't need to worry about MBS yet. I'm actually going to put this hinge here back, and we'll build off of this hinge. So that'll be fine. We are going to have this angle be at 90 for right now. We'll build off of that. Now, this is going to get kind of awkward here. Reason being, we want this to be both ends, right? So we want there to be a grabber on both ends. I want this to be kind of a large advanced grabbing unit like this. And I want it to be grabbed on not like this, but I want it to be grabbed directly to this hinge. I don't know if we can do that here in the construction facility. Also, this is big. I think we are going to end up going with the smaller grab unit for this. Yeah, I think so. So what this is going to end up wanting to be, of course, is moved around like so, armed, and then grabbed right here. The problem with that, of course, is that it's just positioned here. And we would have to unposition it, right? So that's potentially awkward for us. This isn't actually grabbed on. If we put this out on the pad, and let's save this as the Canadarm 2. Okay. If we put this out on the pad, what happens? Probably nothing. I'm expecting that it's just attached, and maybe it grabs on, but when we ungrab it, it's probably attached here. Let's find out. So we put this out on the pad, and we're just trying to figure out the behavior in this situation of that grab point. So we look at this. Yeah, we can see that this is not, in fact, grabbing. It's just attached here, as I thought. So we're probably going to have to do something about that. So we'll revert that back to vehicle assembly. That's fine. And functionally, as far as I'm concerned, that is this right here. So now we're going to need this 90-degree bend, which is, I'm reading this as being a rotation servo. And so that would, of course, mean that we need a rotation servo and or hinge here. So robotic parts. We've got this hinge, and then we've got these rotation servos here. So we've got these guys, and then there's these standard rotors. We might actually go for the rotors. I want to know what size of rotor we would be looking at here. That is not wanting to attach on there. Okay. Let's look at the standard duty rotor. Okay, that's really not wanting to attach there. Fair enough. Let's get that out of there for now. We may have to attach that on station. So that would be the rotor. Then we would need a hinge on here. This hinge is probably too big. I'm not sure that is too big. I think that might be about the right size. So, as a hypothetical, this could then be angled, like this. Cool. So that's all well and good. I think for the moment, we're going to keep this at an angle of 0. Okay. Now, at this point, looking at our reference image, what we have here is we have a rotation servo here, and of course we're going to have a grab arm, and then we've got our hinge here taking us out this direction. And then we've got what looks to be another rotation servo here that can rotate in this direction. So potentially another hinge here. Okay. So that would end up meaning another hinge and rotation servo like this. So functionally, if we had this be a 90-degree angle, so it would be like -90 here. And then this would be a 90-degree angle like that. Now we have quite a lot of ways to rotate this, right? No doubt about that. Then looking at this, we have what appears to me to be a couple of telescoping hydraulic cylinders put together. So something like this. Now this is a 3PT. We may want to 3P6. 3PT extends out to here, and this is actually backwards from the way I want it. This is probably sufficient in terms of telescoping, right? Yeah, this is a smaller one. I think this will be good. So something like this would be our telescoping boom arm. Okay, so we do definitely want these traverse rates to be a bit down, but that's okay. So the traverse rate can go to like 0.1. It's okay. And I want to unextend these at this point. So none of these are set up. Well, we're not set up to have a bend in this, right? So looking at the rest of the Canadarm, we have basically another hinge and rotation servo combo. Basically, it's this duplicated, right? So we grab our standard rotor, and we put that right there like that. So a hinge and a rotation servo like that. And then from there, we have another setup. This is symmetrical from here. So we have it be a hinge and a rotation servo. Something kind of like this. Well, not like that at all. Something kind of like that. We don't need another set of telescoping hydraulic cylinders, but what we do need is another set of rotation servos and hinges. There we go. And then we put our grab arm on top of here. So that would end up being in coupling. We would have an advanced grabbing unit junior here. And then the idea would be that this guy, I think that looks best as yellow to kind of match with the rest here. This guy is going to grab onto the station, in theory our base point, but for now, since we don't have a base point, it's going to be kind of wherever we want it to grab on. And this has a lot of points of articulation, no doubt about it. I'm hoping that these standard rotors and these G11 hinges are strong enough to really hold this relatively steady. I'm willing to bet it's going to wave all over, but that's reasonably fine. So as far as packing this thing up, and we're going to need a second advanced grabbing unit in here, so I'm going to put that here. We're going to install that at this end on station once we get this all put together. So how are we going to do this? Well, that's an interesting question. We might have to build it on station and have it go in like this, right? So if we have to build it on station, we are attached to the hinge here. We're not attached to the grabbing unit. It does not want to attach to the grabbing unit. Okay, I'm going to put this up here for now. I'm going to put the grabbing unit here, and we'll attach it. It really doesn't want to go onto that grabbing unit. Okay, fair enough. We'll have to attach the grabbing unit in orbit. Then the question becomes, how do we release this? If we have something here like a docking port that releases it, I'm afraid that the advanced grabbing unit here will let go at the same time. We know that that happens, and that will be problematic for us. So that's definitely not something that we're looking to have happen. No doubt about that. So I think we're probably going to have to just build this in reverse on the station, and then just grab this advanced grabbing unit out of there. The question then is, if we're going to do that, how do we ensure that the shuttle is stable with the vehicle, or rather with the ISS? Because we would want to grab it with the Canadarm here. Yeah, that makes things complicated. So a release system here does make a lot of sense. We don't have a secondary backup grab arm right now because we removed that. What we could do is we could very, very simply just put a 3PT in here, like this, and put this advanced grabbing unit on top of that. This is a really, really, really simple robotic arm that would allow us to grab onto the station and construct this. And if this floats off for whatever reason, it would allow us to grab that as well. So I think that's the way to go there. And now we need to think about stowing this arm. So obviously, this is a non-starter. No doubt about that. This is very, very, very wide for sure. So one thing we could think about doing is having this hinge be at 0 degrees here. And it stows like so. It kind of goes down and through. This is obviously not ideal. So we could have this guy be at 0. Then, and I'm going to rotate this back out so we can see what's going on here. Then we would need to have something up over here. Well, we can definitely rotate this guy around. Let's see, RPM limit. Are these rotors not what I thought they were? That might be a possibility. They just spin it? They're not rotation servos. Okay, yeah, we're probably going to want to change that then. Okay, so we're going to drop the rotors. We're going to go with the rotation servos, and what size do we want? That's an interesting question for sure. Okay, I will attach this guy right here. Is that good for the sizing? Yes, that's good for the sizing. Okay, so we're going to need to get a rotation servo F12 for each of these then. That's fine. We can definitely do that. It's not a big deal. We can just assign those now. Better to discover that now than later. Okay, so we would then remove this standard rotor, put in a rotation servo there, reattach this guy, get this out of there, put in a rotation servo. I like the looks of the standard rotor, but clearly the functionality is not what we're angling for here. So then we put that in like that. Okay, so that actually does save us a little bit of space, which is relatively convenient. So from here, the interesting thing that we could do is we could stow this almost like that. What if we rotated this hinge here, brought this hinge like this? And this is going to be kind of wild. But then we bring this hinge. This hinge can only go 90 degrees and 90 degrees. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be interesting to store. We may want to have it be not on this hinge here. So we get rid of that, and we put it instead out here, kind of like this, except I would want it to go there. That's definitely going to be a little bit better on the stowage front. We can have this be at like a 5-degree angle. And then we have the problem of this hinge not being as articulated as I wanted it to be. So I think what we might need to do here is invert the hinges and the rotation servos. Potentially. So that's just the hinge there. Should there not be a rotation servo here? I feel like there should be. So this would go right on top of this rotation servo like that. Okay, there we go. That will help matters somewhat. But as far as storing this thing goes, it's going to be very interesting because we only have 90 degrees of articulation right here. So what can we do about that? Well, I'm going to move this hinge out, and I'm going to swap the hinge and the rotation servo. And this rotation is not correct at this point. I want snapping on. There we go. So the hinge and the rotation servo get swapped here. And then this guy gets attached kind of like that, except obviously it's on the wrong rotation. So we would get that squared off like so. Down this direction, I'm going to do the same thing with the hinge and the rotation servos. I'm going to do the hinge, then the rotation servo. So we're going to attach this guy here. We're then going to attach a rotation servo here. We're going to attach this hinge. I guess facing this direction is okay. We can rotate it to go... That is not the angling that I wanted it to be. In absolute space. We can rotate that over this way. There we go. Rotation servo slaps onto that. And then we do something like this. Up over here, we can do the same thing. So hinge first, then rotation servo, then hinge, then rotation servo, then grabbing unit. Like that. Okay, so what does that actually get us? Kind of absolutely nothing, but it kind of does give us things in a way, but it kind of gives us absolutely nothing. I don't know what I thought that would give us. now that I think about it. Okay, one thing we could definitely do is scope down the telescoping hydraulic cylinders and only have one of them. I think that does make a lot of sense to do, to be honest. So we scope this down. They're still very extendy, right? So we can still extend them quite far. So it would be something like this. I think it looks less good. I personally prefer the looks of having it like this, and I think this is more realistic as well. The only question is, how are we going to stow it? Well, we could definitely put in a second point of articulation here. And maybe that's not a terrible concept. And actually, I think we should. So if I can get this rotated reasonably. Okay, it really doesn't... Well, it wants to go on like this. And that's not the way I want it to go on. So we're going to have it come off and go... That is not the angling I'm looking for. Definitely. I want to rotate this guy over to be about here or so. Then we attach it on. But we want to attach the hinge first. So hinge, then rotation servo. There we go. That's a bit more like it. Now that we have the additional articulation here, this can be folded up quite a lot. Okay, we can get this rotated over in local space to be about... We actually need to turn snapping off. But about right there will do. So this is definitely a lot more compact, and that's great. Just having that additional point of articulation makes a big, big difference. So we can do something kind of like that. I am noticing that our angling here is definitely imperfect. And I'm wondering where that's coming from. Because you can see we're not square here. There's no doubt about that. It's probably our rotation here, if I had to guess. Let's turn snapping on and snap this into a position. Actually, I think the issue is a rotation servo. If I can get zoomed in a bit more. Yeah. The issue is this guy. There we go. It's actually that hinge. That's more like it. Okay, so that will stow in reasonably nicely with the extra point of articulation there. We can put in a strut connector from here to, say, here to hold it in place. And then, of course, we're going to have to get it out of there when we use this telescoping hydraulic cylinder. And that's absolutely fine. The main question now is, A, where is our rotation servo here? Well, it's here now. And B, what about our grab arm? So we definitely need to have our advanced grabbing unit here. So that is going to just be attached right here. It is going to be yellow in color as well. Okay, so there we go. There's our Canadarm ready to go. It is past time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to take this thing right on up to the ISS. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time. That was very abrupt. Okay. The bird sounds came in very abruptly there from loading into the KSC. Wonderful.